This is the B251. It's looking great now on picture mode. One feature that I've pointed out already is web mode, that you can just change its mode with voice commands, because it is pretty painful using the mouse on here in some cases. It looks great on picture mode, and you can see there, but now it's very difficult, and it's going to slow me down finding the right place to make it full screen in there and then full screen. You can see it doing its refreshes. Okay, it is what it is. That's e-ink for you. One thing I'm really enjoying at the moment is reading some books here on the monitor. So if I switch to text mode, you can see now the picture doesn't look quite as good. It doesn't look anywhere near as good, to be quite honest, but it is now better, giving me a slightly better use of my mouse, and it is pretty good now for using words and images, as you might expect on text view. And I've been enjoying reading this. This is a suggestion from one of you guys. This book is called How to Read a Book. And I actually don't use it in text view all that often, I'll be honest. I use it mostly in web mode, because web mode is the best kind of balance, I think, of having the cursor move fast enough to be just about usable, and then generally to have the text visible enough and the colors to pop. Video mode is kind of okay, but you can possibly see now that it looks a bit more washed out. You can also do commands like dim the cold light, turn off the front light, turn on the front light, like so, which is pretty good. But I do think it looks best with having this lamp over the top here, which you can just see there as well. But it looks best in picture mode. And one thing you can do is you can get yourself set up in one of the other modes, and then you can switch to picture mode with that command there, and then it looks really good. But you can just see now this is pretty unusable in terms of actually using the mouse. However, in text mode, let's say text mode, what I have been doing a lot on here is actually editing and writing. And now with my keyboard, and because, you know, I'm a reasonably good user of a computer, and I know sort of commands like Control and Shift to sort of select things, you know, the hotkeys of Control and Backspace deletes one word in that direction, Control and Delete deletes a word in the other direction. Also sort of holding down Shift and moving along selects things, Control and Shift selects entire words at a time. You can move down lines or entire paragraphs with Control and up and down. You can move around the document pretty quickly and select things and copy and paste and do all those things, manipulate the text pretty well just with the keyboard. And I'd say if you're someone who is good at using those keyboard shortcuts, then I think you'll get along quite well here with the e-ink monitor. What I do think is, though, we need some sort of native support within Windows and within macOS, I'm sure as well, for actually getting the very best out of the monitor. Because what I did after just one day of using it, I sort of, you know, I realized it was a comment from one of you guys actually in the audience. It was best to go through the clear type mode on Windows and actually calibrate the monitor so that you're getting the best use of the sub pixels. And really, well, that's not really the way that e-ink works, because you have on the color e-ink, you have the pixel, the e-ink pixels, where you've got the actual ink floating up and down to make the darker areas. And you've also got this color section as well, this color grid, color array as well. And so actually what we're going to have getting the best out of this, the way that we're going to get the best out of this is something like is programmed by Books on the Tab series of devices with the color screen, where they're able to get high refresh rate, fast refresh rate, and really good looking images at the same kind of time. And at the minute, it's just taking an ordinary HDMI feed, and it just thinks it's a certain set of pixels. It doesn't know there's a difference between the black pixels and the color pixels, for instance. And we're not giving this wonderful e-ink panel the best chance of success and looking as good as it can, because we don't have that native support within Windows. And I think there'll probably be a bit of a race for those e-ink companies like Books and Big Me. I think we'll have a little bit of a race between them to get the best expression of an ordinary screen, the best use of that signal, and convert it into really good looking font and image here on the e-ink panel. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think it's going to come down to actually having some native drivers, maybe even driving the thing by USB-C so that you can actually code directly for it, rather than just send it an HDMI signal and expect it to deal with that. So I think it's a fascinating point. It's certainly not cheap, but as an alternative to have this screen here for your words, I am really enjoying it. I think it is honestly, you know, it's not a game changer. It's not something that's, you know, absolutely going to change the world for you and your use of computers. And I think actually you've got that option of RLCD as well. And I had the RLCD in this position on my desk for some time and enjoyed that for words as well. But it's a real nice to have. And I think if you're someone who, looking at these two screens that I've got here, the LCD panels that I've got here, the IPS panels, they're fine, they're good. I still need to sort of switch to them sometimes. If I'm going to do a lot of, I'm just finding the mouse on the screen now is quite difficult. If I'm doing a lot of actually manipulating and using the mouse, then what I'm going to need to do is fire that window across to one of my other screens, and then I can use it on one of these IPS panels, and I'll be able to manage that a lot better on that panel. You're just going to be able to do more of those quicker edits, more of that moving around content more quickly. You're going to be able to do that on those screens. It isn't going to be the be all and end all for everything, but what's really nice about it, and I've been doing this quite a fair bit recently, is just getting set up with a document you want to focus on, just pinging it across like so to the screen, turning off the other monitors in the room, and just actually zoning in and working on the words. The other thing that is really good, and I've been doing quite a lot of this as well, is just having up the reading the reference text that I might have, having that on the screen and just using that to sort of read and give me my ideas, not to copy from and to, because that highlighting and that document on there is going to be quite challenging with the mouse being so slow. It's kind of weird. I don't know if you can kind of see me just do everything with the mouse so much slower. It's not unusable. You can use the mouse to get around and manage that, but everything is just that little bit slower. So yeah, I think it's a nice to have if you know you're going to use a lot of words, but it's just not cheap. You just kind of naturally slow all those mouse movements down, and then that's weird, and you kind of catch yourself using the mouse on this screen and you're like, why am I doing this? And you fire it across just with a quick keyboard shortcut, fire it across to one of your normal screens, and then you just do the thing with the mouse that you needed to do really quickly. One nice thing is, luckily, it is Windows, or it's Mac OS if you choose to use that, or it's Linux or whichever. And so you've got all of those keyboard shortcuts that you're normally used to using on your ordinary thing. You're kind of happy with it at that point. Questions about this particular monitor? Yeah, somehow went into picture mode there without me asking it to. So an accidental kind of use of the voice commands. But those voice commands and the fact that it swivels in around by 90 degrees, I've just accidentally hit the power button when I did that. I need to lift it up a little bit. You can see it's very easy to do this. And it automatically rotates as well. Perhaps I've taken the HDMI out when I did that, but there we go. It does automatically rotate. And it sends the information back to the computer that it's in vertical mode. It normally just switches and formats straight away from vertical mode. There we are, we're back on now. So it's good. Honestly, it's a recommend, and I think actually Bigme have done a really nice job on this. The HDMI just came out, and now you've got this vertical reader panel look. Or of course you can have your text document on here and work on that. I am getting on really quite well with it. And if you're somebody who needs to work with a lot of text, yeah, I would say it's a recommend. It's usable for word editing, yes, as long as you're happy with the keyboard shortcuts, I would say. Is the mouse too slow? It's sort of yes and no, I would say. The fastest mode is video mode, which I think is in actually there. So now you can just see the mouse moving across the screen if I just move it across the white bit of text there. And that is slow. It is slower than it is on an ordinary screen. Bigme have released a second update since I've had this monitor, and it has increased the mouse speed and also just generally less instance of ghosting. But all of the things that I've said here do still apply. It is slower than an ordinary screen. However, it's a little bit less severe, but it is, you can get by with it, but you wouldn't want to do it for a long time. And then web mode. Web mode is the mode I use most often just because the colors kind of pop a little bit more on it. And then text mode is what I would use if I was in Word. Text mode, and it just makes the contrast of the text a little bit better. And then lastly, picture mode. Looks fabulous, but you aren't going to want to use that for any actual editing. You can just see that now. That looks really quite good in my opinion. Okay, cool. So that is the Bigme monitor. Do I recommend buying the Bigme Color monitor or the Dasung Paperlike? So I've tried the Dasung Paperlike 2013, which was good. That was a black and white one. And well, that was about £750 for that. And I would say, well, the price up to this one is like £1,400, something like that. So it is quite a significant price jump. But I would say that this sort of size, if you look at this next door to my normal monitor here, this is the similar sort of size, really. It's a little bit bigger, sure. And these are 26 inch and this is 25.3, something like that. Yeah, it's the sort of normal desktop size, really. So I would go with that. The portability factor, of course, having the Dasung is quite good. Dasung make one of this size as well, and they make a color as well. I would say they're probably just as good. From what I've seen, the way that the Dasung, all its different modes, are pretty similar. What I liked about the Dasung was having the ability to change the speed within the modes. So you had the different modes, and then you could also speed up or slow down the speed within each mode. So I think that was quite good as well. Part of me is thinking, wait for books to see what they do in terms of these large e-ink monitors, because these large panels are clearly coming out of the factory now from e-ink, and they're really good. The panel, there's nothing wrong with the panel at all. Well, one interesting point, and people said, well, how, is it 300 DPI? Oh no, it's not 300 DPI, so I don't want it. Well, it's not 300 DPI. If it was 300 DPI at this size, it would be a ridiculous resolution. It would be more than 4K resolution at this size to be the same 300 DPI as, you know, the famed black and white screens on the latest readers, and the 300 DPI of the Kaleido 3 when it's in a smaller tablet. It's already better resolution than these QHD monitors. So it's not quite 4K, but it's a good resolution. And that's one of the issues, I think. But I can't find anywhere exactly what the resolution is in terms of dot per inch, but it is better than QHD, not quite 4K in terms of its pixels across the thing. And I think that there's still going to be the discrepancy, though, between the resolution of the color array and the black and white pixels. So there's that. And I think that issue that the signal it's having will just be straight up this pixel across the screen, and it's having to decide when to use the e-ink and when to use the color array. And that, I think, is why we've got a bit of a discrepancy between how it actually looks and why it's not always perfect. So at this point, I'm not sure what to recommend, but there'll be loads. Yeah, perfect. Lots of people loving that one. Yeah, and I think that's what it's going to be. It's like almost going to need some compute in here to actually get the best out of that HDMI signal, or it needs a driver which is driving it by USB-C and it's sending it and controlling it a bit more directly rather than just sending it a signal. Yeah, that's great to hear. Great. I just love hearing people really enjoying and getting the most out of it, because it really says the thing for me. Yeah, battery life. Yeah, that's the reason to choose between the 3 and the 3C for me, is the battery life, really. If you don't need color, then do that. So you come from the Note Air, good. So that's sort of a 3-year cycle, good. Finally worth the upgrade. And it has been, yeah. When do I think they'll... Well, the Super Refresh actually came out of their monitor technologies, which is really interesting, I think. So the Mirror kind of have something similar to that already. I've never tried a Book's actual monitor. I'd love to, but they've only got black and white ones at the minute. They've got 2, although there was kind of subtle update, Mirror Pro. I think they probably changed just a couple of things on it. Not really a big update. I don't know anything, but I'm kind of expecting them to bring out a color monitor of this size. It would just make sense. So watch this space on that one. I mean, obviously, Dasung have that curved one as well. So maybe they're looking to kind of do something like that. What I think is there will be a bit of a race to be the best e-ink for ordinary computing, if that makes sense, because the limitations of Android aren't massive, but let's face it, we aren't all going across just a purely Android for everything. I think that they'll be entering that with something probably quite impressive at some point. And of course, once you've got that, if you've got a monitor which is plugged into the mains, you don't have the issue with the battery life with Book Super Refresh. So that's definitely a winner.